This week on the Editor's Cut, I want to bring on Martin Peers and Nick Wingfield to help us put some of those bets into context. Martin and Nick, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hey, Akash. Thanks for having us.
Nick, I want to start with you. So you have written about some of these far off bets for our weekend magazine. Tell us a little bit about what your observations have been about how the dialogue has changed around them recently.
Well, if we're talking about orbital data centers, the real reason that this has been thrust to the into the kind of public discourse is the SpaceX IPO. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. This is an IPO that is expected to happen in the second half of this year. The company has said, Elon Musk has said, and it's become a major plank of the SpaceX story, and one that I think we're going to increasingly hear from Elon Musk. Now, there are a variety of reasons for it. One of which, if you listen to Elon Musk, he'll talk about kind of sort of 24/7 free power from the sun. There are other benefits. There's another thing that I think also we're starting to hear more about, which is really the difficulty of building these kind of multi-gigawatt data centers on Earth. And so, in effect, NIMBYism, people who don't want data centers in their backyard on planet Earth, may be driving some of the dialogue that we're hearing about putting data centers in space.
But Nick, have there been any major breakthroughs at all lately in the last couple months? We know the narrative has changed and SpaceX has brought it to the forefront, but has anything changed around our capability to actually commercialize or build or launch this technology?
The biggest change is with with the transportation to orbit. So SpaceX has now successfully tested their large Starship rocket multiple times, and that rocket is critical for lowering the cost of getting kilograms to space. And you really need that kind of capacity in order to deliver the kind of the number of satellites that are going to be required for these orbital data centers to work. So that's critical. There have been some other tests that I don't think have really demonstrated that you can do these data centers at scale in orbit. And we've also seen, some research from Google, which is interested in this type of technology as well. But really, nothing that has proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that orbital data centers can function in orbit.
So, Martin, if Elon wasn't behind these particular bets, you think they would be in the headlines at all?
Sure. I mean, I think Nick actually wrote a story about this a couple of years ago, right, Nick? Well before Elon sort of embraced this. I do think, though, we should step back and look at what's really going on here. Really, Elon has become used to being the center of the tech world, right? He gets an enormous amount of attention, much of which he drives, by putting out these ridiculous announcements. And a couple of years ago, his position began to be threatened because OpenAI was suddenly getting all the attention. So Elon, who had been involved with OpenAI from the beginning, but then had a falling out, Elon starts his own company. But unlike OpenAI, which has raised a huge amount of money from various people, Elon hasn't got the money to fund OpenAI as much as he needs. So what does he do? He creates this ridiculous thesis about sending data centers into space, justifies merging XAI into SpaceX on that thesis, which really doesn't make any sense at all. And now we're all sort of talking about it. It's crazy. This is really all about Elon and his ego and his desire to be in the middle of the whole debate. I think in the end, Elon will not be the main mover in AI, and the people who are investing in the SpaceX XAI IPO are going to be disappointed.
So, Nick, one of the questions I had for you was, look, when the internet was being developed in the 90s, was this how people talked?
Back in the dark ages when Nick was a young lad.
Okay, well, Martin, if you want to
No,
admit to
Nick's
being
older
old,
than I am, so he's.
I was gonna say, I was like, Martin, I was going to Nick to be courteous to you, but you could jump in.
No.
So, look, my question really is: isn't this the way you have to talk about these moonshot bets to get any kind of fun, attention, fundraising, traction about it at all? I mean, what is the alternative? I guess.
Well, we used to talk about things like this back in the '90s as vaporware, you would announce. Then the moonshots weren't, orbital data centers. It was the next version of Microsoft Office or a database or something like that. But very often companies would talk about these sort of far out products. But those really were, I would say, a lot more achievable. And the logical leap to get to those next versions of the product that didn't really exist weren't as great as the ones that we're seeing right now. Which is not to say orbital data centers will never work, or that robo taxis from Tesla, at least, will never work, or Optimus. I mean, they probably will. It's kind of a question of the time horizon. And so, like, do you need to talk about this? I think you do need to talk about this now if you want to tell a story to investors, and that's largely what this is about. I don't think, and maybe it's also partly to spook the market, in competition, because you really can have a broader impact if you start to talk about these things well in advance of when they're ready.
So, Martin, what about from the investor's perspective here? I'm trying to think here, what could have changed in the last 25 years? I mean, people talk about where investors, what asset classes they look for returns that exceed what the market is giving them. And we've seen the venture capital industry kind of, grow over time. And I'm just trying to think openly about
Well,
this. I mean, could part of this be that, I mean, you have to take on more risk today. You have to sort of make bigger
no, I
bets.
I think what has changed, I mean, obviously, many things have changed, but I think a big thing is that this focus on individuals, this sort of blind belief in individuals. I mean, we see it in the political arena and we see it in the business arena. And Elon has created this sort of image of himself because he's had success with SpaceX and then Tesla as this just, visionary that people will just they have put blind belief in what he says. But if you actually watch what he says, he's constantly wrong. And I just think people need to be a little bit more skeptical of some of the more outlandish things that he says. And particularly if you watch him on X, he says the most outrageous, extraordinary, bizarre things. I think his success has really gone to his head, and he just now he's like, believes anything. He's kind of like believing his own BS, kind of thing.
Nick, what do you think could change this in the end? How could this narrative shift going forward? Is it a business going wrong, a technology not panning out, investors getting sick of it?
I don't, it's hard to imagine Musk being more wrong about orbital data centers than has been about fully autonomous Teslas. I mean, he's been promising that now for years and constantly missing deadlines. And I mean, depending on how you view the potential repercussions from that. I mean, Tesla's stock certainly has suffered, but for a long time it hadn't. I think this is just built into the bloodstream of the tech industry. I mean, we haven't even talked about it, but there are some non-Elon players out there who are also making some really bold promises about what AI can do, about what agents can do. That agents are going to kill software as we know it, and none of us really know if that's going to happen. And will they pay the consequences of those types of predictions? It's hard to say. It certainly seems like there's not been a huge penalty for Musk, but he may be a unique case.
I mean, I would say that on that point, the fears about AI hurting, Salesforce or servers now, you can understand where that's actually coming from, and that might eventually end up happening. It's just that there might be a different. It's just a question of the actual time frame. But Elon, I mean, he is the one who's been saying these most ridiculous things about AI that people won't live in poverty anymore. Healthcare will become magical. I mean, the guy's like smoking. I mean, he's obviously, he's on something because you can't believe anything he says, really. I think it's just, fiction.
Right. Okay. Well, Martin and Nick, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Martin Peers, our co-executive editor, and Nick Wingfield, our features editor here at The Information.